Welcome to the Arkansas Cattle Business Podcast, brought to you by the Arkansas Cattlemen's Association. Here, we dive into the heart of Arkansas's cattle industry, where legislation, education, advocacy, and development come together to support the hardworking cattle producers of the natural state. Whether you're in the pasture or on the road, this is your connection to the people, policies, and programs shaping the future of our industry. All right, Arkansas Cattle Business Podcast Episode 2. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Welcome back, hopefully.
Yeah, if not, if this is your first time, welcome. You didn't miss much. You can just go back one episode and catch up on everything. We are your hosts, Michelle and Nora Lee, and we are excited to be here today for the second episode of this podcast.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah. We had some good feedback on the first one, so that's exciting to see that people are engaging and listening and enjoying what we've been able to provide in that one short episode. So looking forward to today.
For sure.
All right. Do you want to go ahead and hop in and jump straight into Hats on the Hill?
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. We have a lot to cover.
Yeah, we have a lot to cover. A lot happened this week. So, first off, we have a new president this week. So what are the federal updates for this week?
Yeah, so we do have a new president. So if you did not know, somehow, inauguration occurred on Monday, January the 20th. So president is no longer president-elect. It is now President Trump is back in the White House and has hit the ground running with a lot of movement on the executive order side and then a lot of the movement on the Senate confirmation hearings side. So they actually started Senate confirmation hearings before President Trump, then President-elect Trump, was even inaugurated. And so they've already confirmed 2 of President Trump's cabinet picks. And then this week, we actually were able to, the Senate Ag Committee, had the confirmation hearing for Secretary-designate Brooke Rollins for the USDA Secretary position. She has not been voted on yet. She has not been confirmed, but the hearing did happen. And I think the Senate Ag Committee was fairly happy with what they heard of her goals and thoughts for the administration and for the upcoming 4 years. On the other side of the federal updates, I mean, it was a busy week in D.C. with the inauguration and with the beginning of the confirmation hearings. We're kind of keep an eye on that as they go forward and let y'all know as anybody gets confirmed that is applicable to agriculture. But they had some movement on the Congress front, but nothing really quite pertaining to the livestock industry yet that we are keeping a super close eye on. But again, as it comes up, and I'm sure it will, as it comes up, we'll keep y'all updated.
So are there any specific updates that our members should know about regarding the federal legislation?
Yeah, so right now we're keeping an eye on a lot of different pieces at the federal level. They have not really had a lot of movement on livestock-specific items, but they have been discussing, not even on the federal current legislation side, but there's been a lot of discussion around the Corporate Transparency Act. If you have been keeping up with federal legislation and federal laws, that was passed in 2021, and I have my notes here because it has undergone quite a lot of movement within the last month, and so I'm not going to go through piece by piece of every single entity, every single change that's happened through that, but it passed in 21, and essentially the effect it has for cattle producers is the requirement for farmers and ranchers who operate under certain legal structures to file beneficial ownership information with the FinCEN office. And so the goal of that was to reduce financial crime, but the new mandate back from 21 has a lot of impact on farmers and ranchers whose operations have fewer than 20 employees and are structured as corporations such as limited liability companies or companies that are registered with the Secretary of State. So it's a lot of our farmers here in the state of Arkansas. I mean, fewer than 20 employees, check for most of them, and then registered as an LLC or with the Secretary of State. And so technically that deadline, the original deadline, was January the 13th to file your beneficial ownership status. That has undergone 4 different date changes within the past few months, with a couple of different federal injunctions. Just yesterday, I say yesterday, we are recording this on Friday. Just yesterday, the Supreme Court overturned one of those injunctions for a few hours. We were kind of nervous that meant that all cattle producers would have to start filling out beneficial ownership forms very quickly. Ended up not being the case, and so currently there is still an enforceable nationwide injunction. So FinCEN is not enforcing the Corporate Transparency Act while that is in place. And so again, with that's halted, we're hoping to see a little bit of not even a little bit, we're hoping to see a permanent fix to that for cattle producers coming up with this new administration. But as always, I am not an attorney. I am not a tax professional. Please consult your tax professional or an attorney if you're interested or curious or worried about that. And so right now, that's halted. Luckily, just wanted to kind of touch base on that because it has had a lot of movement, quote unquote. If you're watching online, I'm doing air quotes. A lot of movement because there's been so many unclear steps and points and injunctions and overturns, and nobody kind of really knew, and so it's still a really fluid situation, but we'll keep y'all updated on that as it goes.
Yeah, for sure. So shifting gears here, let's focus on the state capitol. So what's this week's schedule look like for the state legislature?
Yeah, so they were closed Monday for Martin Luther King Day, and so it started off with a slow week, and actually they ended up wrapping up Thursday and headed home. So if you don't know, for the first good bit of legislative session, they'll meet Monday through Thursday and then add Fridays as needed to be able to finish on time. And so it was a pretty short week for the legislative body here in Little Rock. Does not mean it was short on agenda items or things that got done, but they were here in Little Rock Tuesday through Thursday this week.
For sure. So last week we discussed the Bill 61 and 68. Can you provide an update for us on those?
Yeah, so to remind you, in case you don't remember, let's talk about SB 61 first. So Senate Bill 61 from Representatives Deanne Vaught and Stetson Painter, main led by Senator Ricky Hill. That was the veterinary telemedicine bill. So authorizes veterinary telemedicine in the state of Arkansas. And so that was introduced into the Senate Ag Committee this week. It passed out of the Senate Ag Committee with a recommendation for due pass. Went to the Senate floor. It passed 33 yays to 2 nays. It is now on the House side, so it has been read and referred to the House Agriculture Committee. So we're looking at seeing that one next week on the agenda for the podcast and for the House Ag Committee. And then the other one from Senator Hill and Representatives Vaught and Painter is Senate Bill 68, which authorizes veterinary technicians, technologists, and technician specialists to go to a location other than where the supervising veterinarian is. So it allows a veterinary technician, technologist, technician specialist to go out to a farm without a veterinarian with them and conduct some certain diagnostic things, certain abilities there. And so that one also passed out of the Senate Ag Committee and the Senate floor. That one had one more yay vote, so it was a 34 yay to 1 nay. And so again, goes to the House Ag Committee. So we'll keep y'all updated. Just as a reminder, those are both priority legislation for the cattlemen's, and so we're strongly supporting that and really grateful to see positive movement so far.
Yeah, so is there any new bills that got filed this week that we're looking at?
Yes, so we are one of the newest ones that came on is SB 84. It was filed earlier this week. It's sponsored by Senator Blake Johnson and Representative Deanne Vaught. And so Senate Bill 84, I'm lovingly referring to as a moratorium on moratoriums. And so essentially this bill prohibits a moratorium on the issuance of permits in watersheds and other bodies of water by state agencies. So then if a state agency can't enforce or cannot create a moratorium, who takes it over. This bill would institute approval must be obtained from the Arkansas Legislative Council. It also makes past moratoriums unenforceable. And so one of the reasons we are looking at this bill from the cattleman's perspective is mainly from a private property rights perspective. We have policy that supports private property rights. If you own a piece of land, we believe, our members believe, you should be able to do what you like on that land. And so, as long as it is not breaking the law. And so, one of those, as long as it's not an illegal activity, I guess I should specify. And so, right now, the way it stands is moratoriums can be created or can be, created's the best word, therefore, that by an agency of choice. And so whoever the jurisdiction agency is can say, hey, we're done. Prime example of that right now is the attempted moratorium on the Buffalo River watershed for swine farms. And so this bill would make it where this agency of choice, this case Department of Agriculture, would have to go in front of the Legislative Council and provide justification for that moratorium on permitting and then bring it to a vote. And so one of the reasons we, like I mentioned, that we're supporting this is really just going back to that private property rights that our members really value is it's their land. They want to be able to raise whichever animals that they want there. And for us, our argument has always been it's a very slippery slope from a hog farm moratorium to raising cattle moratoriums. So that one hasn't been, it's been introduced in the Senate. It is going to be sent to the Senate Agriculture Committee. I probably next week will keep an eye on it as it moves through and keep y'all updated.
Sure.
Also on the legislative front, from the federal standpoint, the House Ways and Means Committee met this week and talking about the quote-unquote Trump-era tax cuts, and so looking at a lot of it from the cattleman's perspective, looking at the inheritance tax or the death tax. So like we talked about last week, it is set to, the current death tax, inheritance tax level is set to sunset in 2020, the end of 2025, and so this year, and so increasing that threshold, or decreasing that threshold, and saying that if your operation, your family, you have this level of monetary value of items. That's includes your house, your land, your cattle, your equipment. Everything within that is below what that new threshold will become, which should be around $5 million, which is not hard to hit in agriculture, especially when you look at all of the various pieces of land. A lot of times we lovingly and jokingly say like we're land rich and money poor, and that's definitely the case. Then this inheritance tax would make it where if you were the person to pass away, your next of kin, the people that take over the operation for you, the people that inherit this would then have to pay exorbitant amounts of taxes on this. And so while we are hopeful with a new administration that we'll be able to see the raising of that threshold, or keeping that threshold where it is, or ideally doing away with the inheritance tax completely as it pertains to agriculture, we will continue fighting for one of those two outcomes at the national level, because we know that's going to be a big issue coming forward. While we do have a new administration that is amenable to a lot of these conversations, we're still going to keep continuing the conversations on our end with our federal delegation.
So we've been going to a lot of county meetings here recently, and we went to one last night, and they asked a really good question. So why is the Arkansas Cattlemen's Association so important in the legislative stand front? What have we passed that is very significant in the past?
Yeah, I would just like to know that this is not on the piece of paper. Come on. No, and so the question this week was what happens if the cattleman's isn't there? And so what happened at the Capitol? What happens if the cattleman's doesn't exist? And so kind of made us think of this of that's a really good question. What does happen? There's a lot of other ag associations out there. There's a lot of other ag lobbyists at the Capitol. But what we provide as the Cattlemen's Association is the perspective and of we're only addressing cattle producers' issues. We are only looking at how this specific item, the specific bill, the specific piece of legislation affects cattle producers. And so one of the prime examples of that is the tax exemptions that we were able to get it was quite a few years ago, but able to continue protecting, is if you get a disaster payment that is within a certain realm of disaster payments. So ECP program, the LFP program, a couple of different other ones there. If you receive a disaster payment from the USDA FSA office, if you are a cattle producer, it is exempt from Arkansas state taxes. I'll repeat that. If you are a cattle producer, and only a cattle, a livestock producer, it is exempt from Arkansas state taxes. And so that was a really big win for cattle producers when that was passed. We've been able to continue having that, and producers continue being able to enjoy that benefit of being able to save a little bit of money. And so we did the math on the LFP payments back in 2022. So if you don't know, the whole state was in a horrendous drought in 2022. Almost every single county received LFP payments, and so that was on average $300 per producer that was saved from those Arkansas state taxes. And so if you're going through and you were in a drought, we were in a drought this year, if you received an LFP payment and you're working with your tax preparer or your accountant as you go through this process and they push back on that state tax exemption, reach out to the office. We've got the Arkansas code sitting on my desk that specifies where these are exempt from Arkansas state taxes. And so really big win for producers, and one of the things that we like to highlight, and we were reminded at that county meeting that the producers see that and are grateful for it as well.
For sure. That's all my legislative questions for today.
Yeah, so Hats on the Hill this week. I did have somebody ask me last week, where's the hat? The hat has been on the Hill. I promise. The hat is in the office. It is on the Hill. I did have a representative walk up to me the other day. He's like, "I am so sorry." He's like, "I can't remember your name." He's like, but I know you're with the Cattlemen's." I was like, "Yes." And he's like, "It's the hat." I'm like, exactly. And so the hat is on the Hill. It's doing its job. It just doesn't fit with the headphones. If you're watching online, we have fairly large headphones sitting here so that we can hear each other as we do this. And so the hat just doesn't fit with the headphones.
I mean, we could set it on the table here, but you know.
We could. Then we'd probably knock it over and Randy would be mad.
Yeah.
So, perfect. So we're going to talk a little bit about membership drive. We're going to shift gears from the Hats on the Hill into our membership section. So last week we talked about the membership benefit of the accidental death and dismemberment. But this week I want to talk about something maybe a little bit less tangible. I want to talk about the education portion. And so what education is provided to our members at the county level?
Yeah, so counties meet, it depends. They meet mostly once a month or a couple months out of the year. But some of them have like really good educational speakers at each one. I know some of them have extension agents that come and talk about, different forages. This summer, I know a lot of them talked about the tick disease that was going around and different things. And I know some of them have field days where you can go out to other people's farms and see what they're doing, get a hands-on experience. I think those are really cool. And which at the state level, we have our cattlemen's colleges at convention, and then we have our area conferences coming up, and we're really excited for the educational component that's coming up. We can't really talk about that just yet, but we'll talk about it next week. So, yeah, we're going to tell our board first. Yes.
So we've got our first quarter board meeting this weekend, and we are going to be able to announce to them first what our area conferences are going to look like, and then we'll let y'all know right after that.
Yep.
Perfect. So for members who have lapsed in their membership, what would you say to encourage them to return to the Cattlemen's?
Yeah, so it's basically the connection to your county level. So if you have anything that's going on and you have questions, it might be easy to say, call somebody from your county and be like, "Hey, I have this happening. Have you ever experienced this? Yes or no?" And like I said, counties tend to meet monthly or every other month. It's just a great way to stay up to date with information at the state level. Also, we give an update to the state board reps. Michelle sends them a monthly email about what's going on legislatively, educationally, just about anything that's going on. We give an update, so they're able to provide an update for them.
And so, I mean, you talked about what the benefits of these county meetings and the educational portion of those, but we probably have some members here that haven't been to a county meeting, that didn't even know their counties had meetings. Maybe they're a new member, maybe they've been a member for a while and they've just not been attending. How can those members find out, one, when their county meets, who to contact, all those pieces?
Yeah, so you may know your board rep or president or whatever, or you may not. So if you get you're in your magazine every month, there's the list of the state board reps from each county, and then they're also on our website. So if you need to know anything, their phone number is on there. We try to keep that up to date. If it's not up to date, let us know, because I know some of our things are old. But we try to keep that up to date as possible. So just reach out to us as well, and we can connect. I know a lot of people call like, "Hey," I had a couple calls this week and be like, "Hey, I'm in this county. I need to know who's over this. I need a couple contacts." I'm like, "Yeah, these are the officers of that county." So.
Yeah, we also sometimes will know when the counties are meeting as well. I know Norley and I have been hitting quite a few counties, so we've got quite a few on our calendar, but we also just know that some of them, they meet every third Thursday of the month. And so while we might not be able to tell the caller or the person, "Hey, there's the exact location and the time," we'll at least know that this county meets these days. Here's who you need to contact. And I encourage you to reach out and contact your state board reps, contact your presidents, or I'll call the office and we'll put you in touch with them, because those county meetings are an invaluable piece of the puzzle of the county membership, as well as the state membership. Like Norley said, they meet every month, every other month, kind of just depends on the county. But I do think it's an invaluable piece of the membership benefit. There is that networking capability. Sure. Perfect. You kind of touched on it earlier on what upcoming events we have. And so, like Norley mentioned, we have our area conferences. So for those of you who don't know, there are area spring conferences. And so these are events that we host every Monday and Tuesday in March, with one Thursday in there. It is a free event for our members to come out and eat a steak dinner with us, visit with vendors throughout the state, visit with other producers from their area, and hear an ACA legislative update along with an educational component, which we'll have more information about soon. So that information is on our website. You can RSVP online. You can RSVP by calling the office. Either way, all we ask is that you call us and let us know so we know how many steaks to buy. And so really looking forward to those events. They're one of my favorites of the year because we get to see so many of our members, and we will see almost 3,000 producers throughout the month, and just be able to go out and cook a good steak dinner and eat that and fellowship with those producers. So keep an eye out on those information and more details and exciting announcements about area conferences to come. And
I actually had a lady call this morning and RSVP for it.
It's already started. We haven't even advertised it yet.
I know. And dinner is served, or doors open at 5 and dinner is served at 6.
Perfect. Yes. Good reminder, because the doors opening at 5 gives you the opportunity to visit with those vendors and network with them. They make it possible for that steak dinner to be free. And so for our members, so please come out, visit with them. Great opportunities, just a great event all around. So we can wrap up by saying, how can people stay connected to the ACA, and how can they follow the podcast and get more information like this?
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said last week, follow us on social media. We try to post every week at some point. I know I only posted like twice this week. Oops. But I try to post 3 times. And then by our weekly newsletter. So every Friday at noon, I send out a weekly newsletter. And it just has industry updates. I added a Hats on the Heel update for this month. And just different things that are happening. I know the COMA conference is coming up in February, so I have the registration link on that for this week, and different things like that, and different sales that are coming up. You can see them on that newsletter. So.
Perfect. Yep. And as for the Arkansas Cattle Business Podcast, make sure you like, subscribe, leave us a review. We are found everywhere you can find podcasts, pretty much. Yep. I believe Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. I don't know, all of them. I'm not going to list them all because I'm going to forget them. But anywhere you'd like to. We're also on YouTube. And so make sure you like and subscribe. Give us a follow for the podcast and leave us a review. It's still a new podcast. It definitely helps us get found. But we appreciate you tuning in this week to the Arkansas Cattle Business. We hope you've been able to learn a little bit of something, and we hope everyone's going to enjoy the slightly warmer weather that we're having.
Sun is shining.
I know, I didn't have to wear a jacket today. So I'm going to take the wins where we can get them. Mm-hmm. Hopefully the land of the time of breaking ice every single morning will slow down. But we appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in this week.
Yeah, thank y'all. This is the Arkansas Cattle Business Podcast, your trusted source for all things cattle in the natural state.